everyone, and welcome back to the Grateful Not Greedy podcast. My name is Kris, and I am here with the always ready to chat co-host, and her name is
Rachel. Hi, everybody.
Rachel. Rach, I hope you're ready to chat today, because today I have a topic that I thought was super interesting. And again, it's one of those that I think we're not alone on this. And you might have some insight because you also have kids. And there's just a lot of stuff that comes up. And I think it's actually interesting to talk about this in a lot of ways. We'll talk about it through the vehicle of kids, but it's a relationship conversation. And it kind of overlaps with a lot of things I feel like we've been talking about lately. So, you ready? How are you?
I'm ready. Yeah, let's do this.
Okay, let's dig in. I was I got a little voice message from a girlfriend the other day. And I've had this somewhat similar conversation I probably several times about, your kid, whether it's a boy or a girl, is starting to get to a certain age, and they may or may not have like a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever, however they call it, situationship, or someone that they might start hanging out with. And maybe that person is over at your house, and maybe the kids are going to watch a movie or something. And maybe they're watching that movie in his or her bedroom. And maybe they incidentally close the door. And maybe you're like, do I open that door? And you know what the problem is? Is it among so much stuff, but this stuff happens so quickly. Like we talked about the other day, you go from having an 8-year-old to a 10-year-old, and all of a sudden you have a kid who's like, what do you mean you're closing the door and watching a movie and you need blankets and what's going on? Right. So, I thought like, and I could kind of give you a sense of some of the things that I said, and you can like tell me what you think about like that whole conversation, because it kind of, for me, unloaded a whole adult conversation in there too. So the basic concept was, I've got this daughter, she's in high school, maybe like a sophomore or something, like that kind of age, 15, 16. And there's a kid who's coming over, and I don't even know if it's a Friday night or it's a weekend or whatever. And, they're just it's hard for the kids to find stuff to do, right? So it's like, what are they going to do? They don't drive yet, or, sometimes they do, or one of them drives, whatever. So they're going to like watch a movie. And then at one point, the door is closed. So, so my friend is like, well, what am I supposed to do with that? Because I don't want them to be somewhere else, right? I don't want them to be on their own. You know what I mean? I don't want them to be in some car or trying to figure something out if they're interested in pursuing that.
Right.
And, she's like, so I kind of went in there like, hey, do you guys need anything? Da-da. And then she's like, and I left, and then I left the door open. I was like, well, that's reasonable. That's like a reasonable
Yeah.
approach. And I was like, this is kind of was my opinion about it. And probably, I've been in similar situations because I have girls and boys. I've got all kinds of teenage examples. But I was kind of like, I think at that point, I think we have to understand. This is heavy, and I think maybe not everyone's going to agree with this. I think we have to understand that our kids are going to make their own choices, and I think that we have to understand that our kids come with certain personalities. All of my kids have very different views on this, even this one issue, very different views, right? So our kids come with certain personalities, and then they have certain experiences that reinforce those personalities, and then they find themselves in these situations. So I was like, for me, I feel like it's more rather than it being a closed door, open door conversation, it's a conversation of, hey, I kind of noticed that when whatever, Brian, is that an old name? Maybe it's, what's her name? Dylan. I kind of noticed when like Dylan was over the other day that you guys have the door closed, or you close the door. And I just would like to kind of run down with that with you, just so I'm clear that you have the information and the emotional readiness to have that door closed. So I was like, I would approach it of, do you have what you need to be making the decisions that you're finding yourself in, to be responsible for the decisions that you are? I personally would have the conversation about, even I had this conversation with my kids when they were probably too young, but it's just like, you just don't I just never wanted them to be caught off guard, and not even from their own choice, but, stuff can happen, and I just wanted them especially my girls, but my boys, to always know that they own their own body and they own their own choices, and no one, an adult or kid, nobody can ever make those choices for them, and, that whole conversation. So, I was like, I saw it more of an opportunity to kinda open the dialogue, especially with your 14, 15, 13, 16-year-old kid about, "I'm here to teach you, to guide you, to give you what you need in this moment to be prepared for this situation," like, whatever the situation is, right? So, so you can kinda give me your
Yeah.
perception of it too, because it's that conversation too, but then it's also the conversation of bringing in these new inputs, so these new, boyfriends, girlfriends, kids, like, friends, whatever. Your kids start to get into, like, high school and stuff, and all of a sudden there's these kids coming in that you're not choosing, right? You didn't It's not like
Mhm.
your friend's kid. You're like, "Let's do a play date," all of a sudden it's, like, a lot more, unilateral inputs, and kind of knowing what to do with that also, because you may not always be aligned with those kids. You might not always have the
Mhm.
same you might not love your daughter's boyfriend or your boyfriend's girlfriend or your boyfriend's boyfriend or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Um, so yeah. So kind of let's chat about that a little bit because it's kind of a lot. I feel
It
like that's a
is.
lot.
I think I love the idea that it begins a conversation. And that's what I really lean into. For me, I have a teenage boy. What these
Yeah.
conversations are different. And here's the thing that I'm going to be just honest about. I never thought I'd be here with a teenage boy in my situation, not having
Ah,
his dad here to have these
yes.
conversations. And so for me,
That's such a good point. Yeah, you thought you'd be
it's
able to pass the buck.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
like, I can pass the buck, and I'm
Yeah.
not a boy, so I don't know what this is like. And so at first, I was like I felt the need to start having these conversations, and I was like, "And it's on me, and not a boy, so what am I gonna impart to him?" And then I stepped back for a second, and I realized actually, being a female is going to help me even more because I can tell him from this side, this is what happens. From this side, this is what you need to be aware of. From
Mm.
this place, I'm grateful that my son knows himself well enough that I don't have to have him do like deep dive in as like, what are you like? He's pretty clear on who he is and like confident, pretty confident in that. And so I struggled at first with the idea of like, how am I going to help him with this as a female,
Yeah.
as he's like stepping into this world and have these conversations. And then I realized, you know what? There's a lot I can give him that I don't think a lot of boys get. Because they might get
Mm.
the father son conversation. He's getting the mother son conversation. And I was
Right.
like, okay, that's because that's where I can be grateful, not greedy. Right. That's where I can be
Yeah.
grateful I can give him that and not be like, that he doesn't get the male side. Well, that's okay because he's getting something different. And what I do know is whatever he's getting, it's gonna help. And I can't just be upset that he's not getting what I imagined would be the way he's getting it. Like I imagined it would be, father son conversation of like,
Right.
this is what you need, this is how like this is what you need to think about. And but so for me, it was more like a conversation. I was like, okay, this is happening. Like you are, you have someone you're interested in, like, and I believe getting in front of it long before it becomes any, like, long before the door
Yeah.
gets closed, right?
Yeah.
Long
I know,
before
but it happens so fast, Rach.
and it does. I mean, like, I'm
Honestly,
saying
like, you're
I
trying to work, you're trying to, like,
yeah,
make dinner
yeah,
for in 6 months, and then, like, you're
totally.
trying to get him to soccer practice, and all of a sudden the door's closed, like, it
Yeah,
happens it's just, like,
I agree,
happens.
like, it happens fast, and a lot of the times, like, sometimes you just don't know, right? You
Yeah,
don't
yeah,
know until,
yeah.
like, all of a sudden, they appear in your house with a new friend who
Yeah.
they're,
Yes,
whatever,
exactly.
and you're just like,
Completely.
"Whoa," and then they go
Yeah.
to like, and they wanna watch a movie, and you're like, "Wow, I am not prepared." All I'm
Yeah.
saying is I had the time, and I went in front of it as quickly as I could.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
But
but
let me just stop too because I think you made such a good point. And I want to make sure that we like put a an exclamation point on that. I love what you said about you didn't anticipate being in this situation. So even whatever's coming from our dad's side and whatever is coming from our side, I really appreciate that because I just feel like I'm the one who's around a lot. Just physically I'm around a lot, so I'm kind of the one who's yammering on a lot. And I know that there are conversations definitely that are taking place between my husband and the kids all the time also that I'm not privy to. I don't, there's only so much time to download, especially when you have a
sure,
lot of kids,
of
business
course.
and a lot of stuff going on. But I love the concept of this duality, right? There's the conversation that the mom me can have with my sons, and there's the conversation that the mom me can have with my daughters, and then there's the conversation that my husband could have with my daughters and my husband can have with my sons. And all of that, hopefully you're aligned, but all of that,
Mm.
even if you're not, I guess, is just letting go, right? Is valuable input to
Mm.
share with your kids so they have these different perspectives because it's again we talked about this before, the arrogance that you might bring to it of, "Oh, let me tell you, this is how I did it," or "This is how, what
Yeah,
happened to me," or "This is, something that you have a fear about might happen to them,"
yeah,
in their experience, and so you're kinda holding on to that. But just being very proactive about yes, I agree with you, getting in front of it however you can, but also being very, forthright as a mom with whatever, I think that's a good point. We shouldn't. We, can look at not being almost sexist in the
yes,
approach to it, and I remember even when my boys were young, it's kind of an uncomfortable situation or, to talk about even their sexuality or kind of how it goes. And I remember I was just like, I bought them a little book, it's like the boy book or the boy body book or something like that. And I just like, left it on their bed, just kind of like, here it is. So at their leisure, when they were curious or ready, like they could at least get some good solid information. So yeah. Okay, keep talking on that because I think that is a really important point that you just made of, like, getting them multiple perspectives on what
exactly.
this can be
And
for them.
well, and you said even like you're like, I don't know all the conversations your husband is having with your kids. And of course you would never know. But the idea is it's great because they're getting multiple inputs, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of like we've talked a lot about making decisions and choices. And it's a skill, it's a practice, and we want
Yeah.
them to be better at it. And this is another one is to distill information and see what applies to you and what it doesn't. And I think that's what you talk about too a lot with your with how you approach this. And when people ask you for advice, it's like, okay, now I'm going to give them options. Like you've got to make these choices. You want to make them in advance, not in the heat of the moment. You want to be clear on what your path is
What are your
and what you
values? What do you
want,
yeah.
what your values are. How do you want to be perceived, seen, felt, then, like all of that stuff, like who do
Mhm.
you want to be and what decisions are you making to align with that?
Uh-huh.
And even and I never thought of this, like the other piece is like I'm giving him this information. Of course, our kids are getting information every which way. Like they're
Yeah.
getting them from their friends, they're getting them
Yeah.
online, they're getting from like media, they're getting them, all of that stuff.
Their other friends, like, their experiences, like, over at another friend's house with the
Exactly.
dad's girlfriend or like, you just don't know what the inputs are. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's like, how do we teach them again how to
Mhm.
distill and realize like these are different choices. Everyone's making different choices. They're not right, they're not wrong. For you, you have to find what is right for you. And the hard thing
Yeah.
is we're dealing with teenagers
Yes.
and their brains aren't developed and they
Nope.
are like, there's like lots of stuff going on and they're in hormones and they're like, da, 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 and you're just like, okay, so how can I give them something that is going to help clear and like it's a muddy situation, how we give them something to clear the mud out, like so they can
Yeah.
see clearly. And it is I don't believe it's one conversation. I believe it's multiple conversations to hit back to again, little bits at a time, because I
Yeah.
know when I get new
I
information,
agree.
I need to process it. Like, I need to think
Yeah.
about it. And then, like, like, circle back a little later and be like, so, like, what did you think about that? And to your point, a book, like, if you have a book that you really like that struck a chord with you, I would give
Mhm.
that. I mean, I did
Mhm.
the same for my son. I was like, I want you to
Did
read
you?
this
I
book.
think it's really helpful. I think it kind of, disarms it, it's like, I'm not sitting there saying, "Let's talk about that book. Oh, did you read on page
No,
45 about this,
never,
that, and the
never.
other?" Because there's a
Yeah.
lot of right, I never
Yeah.
even bring it up and I just kinda, like, put it there, but then I will say, like, to your point, like, "Hey, if there's ever anything in there that you wanna review,
Mhm.
or you
Yeah.
wanna I'm your
You have
person, like,
questions.
I always want you to use me as a resource medically, first and foremost too, but also just, as your mom, like I want to be part of that conversation. And I think the thing that also is worth saying is, I mean, I think it could come off like, oh, I have all this advice. No, I'm like talking to myself because I have teenagers right now. So I'm like, I am literally reminding myself like what to do because I have a son who's 21 and I have daughters all the way down to 15. So it's like we have all these ranges. But I think just being able to I'll sit in the car sometimes and I'll say things like, "All right, I know some of my kids really don't like to talk. Some of my kids love it. They're just like, "Oh, oh, and then mom, this, that, and the other." And others, there's a couple of them are all about it, and a couple of them are definitely not. So with those that are not, I'll just sit in the car. I'll be like, "Hey, I know I get the impression that some of these things are really uncomfortable for you to talk about. So I'm just gonna spew here a little bit. You don't have to acknowledge it. You don't have to anything. I just would like you not to have your AirPods in for the next 5 minutes, the next three seconds, the next 30 seconds, whatever. Or they might have their AirPods in. I always do this in the car, which is like this. I'm sorry, I'm waving. Just you can't see it. So I always give like a wave from the front of the car to my AirPod kids in the back, which is the signal like I'm saying something. Do you want Starbucks or like I'm saying something up here, so it's just that, and then I'll use that just to give to your point maybe a minute's information like, "Hey, you might wanna consider what your position is on, some of these situations that you're gonna find yourself in. You need to have the answer already made before it's made for you, et cetera, et cetera." But, um, yeah, I
But that's
think
a good, what you said here, though, I really love is like the conversation's never done,
no.
because you were just talking about the age difference between your kids.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Right, and you're
Yeah.
thinking of all of them because the conversation is still going on with each of them at just
Oh,
different
very
phases,
much so,
and so
very
it's
much
like,
so.
"Oh, no." I think when I was growing up, "Oh, we had the conversation, check the box, we're out." Right? That's not
Yeah,
where we
or
are
we had to
now,
go
we
yeah, I
are
think you were 11 and we were at Jack in the Box and it's over, right? Now ding, yes, right, yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
you got the pamphlet or the whatever,
Yeah,
you're like, done. Um, but now I think it's the conversation that continues, and the complexities add on, and the age adds on, and the experiences add on, but the conversation still continues
well, yeah, because then
as
they're 21 and they have a license to go, go to bars and, freely get
totally,
alcohol and stuff like that, so yes, the
right?
conversation
And
definitely keeps changing.
how are those choices different? How are the
Right.
implications of those choices different? How are the
Yeah.
people different at this age? Like, who are you gonna run into there now?
Mhm.
What is going to change that situation? I'm
Yeah.
sure there's one that's like, between 15 and 16, driving and not driving. There's the
Yeah.
one that between like graduating high school. There's the one for before go
When
to
you become an
college. There's like,
adult. Yeah, when you become
yeah,
18,
when you become
or
18,
17
like,
and a half, and you could have issues. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
so all of these are ongoing, and it's the question is like, when do you start? Well, that is dependent on you have a good idea of your kid. I have a good idea of my kid. I started at the time that seemed appropriate for them. And or it's the time that you're like, wait, the door's closing. I better go have this conversation
Yeah.
soon. Like, and no, it's not a wrong time. It's just seize the moment when you can,
Well,
not
and you might have to seize multiple moments to your point because
absolutely.
that door is gonna get closed, and then you're gonna say a little something, and then you're gonna come back and the door is gonna close again, and at some point, if you have a hard line on these things, you need to decide what your hard line is about. Is your hard line about punishment? Is your hard line about, not welcoming that person over? Is your hard line about, whatever restrictions or that kind of stuff? I mean, my hard line was, you're gonna need to very quickly decide who you are. And that there's no judgment on this whatsoever. 0. To your point, so many times you've said this, like, you have to own the decision that you are making. So, and you're gonna own that for the rest of your life. If it's a big decision, you could own it for the next 30 seconds, 3 months, or 30 years, right? It could be that big of a decision that you're making. So, just being prepared. And then really it's like, what's my responsibility in that? I think that's why when my friend was talking about my friends also like, this is one of my friends who's divorced and, kind of in that dating pool. So the conversation is double-sided, right? Because the conversation is, well, I'm telling her, if I tell her not to close the door, well, she's a certain age and I can be like, hey, the door stays open. And then what do I do about my friends who come over and are introduced, right? So it's like, you
Oh,
gotta,
yeah, I can speak to that.
right? So it's like, okay, I would imagine, like, you have to be ready for that and responsible. So kind of, I think actually that's a really good point. Like, I don't have the same situation. Like, what's your
Yeah.
position on that? Because, that's another whole thing of like, as the kids are introducing us to their new friends or their relationships or situations or whatever they have, a lot of adults are in the conversation of how to introduce their friends, uh, you know, in whatever capacity to the
Yeah.
kids. And what's the responsibility there with that conversation? How much are they involved in that life and in that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot here
There's a
in
lot.
respectful conversations and being very sensitive to what each
Mm.
of us needs, to what because
Yeah.
sometimes I just don't vibe with my kids' friends. Sometimes I'm like, if you, or as a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's like, gosh,
Yeah.
I'm totally fine with this. I'm like, I'm down. Like, as a person, I'm totally down, but I just don't see them bringing out the best in you. I don't see this, and that's a really difficult position to be in too, right? So, yeah,
It
you can
is.
definitely speak to it from both sides, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I can say, from, the dating world side of having someone come in, and it was interesting when I stepped in the dating world, there was a whole, like there was the full gamut as I, like, went around and had dates and, like, spent time with people and, like, telling there was someone I was seeing for a while that he's like, "You're not gonna be my kids until, like, this is, like, locked down fully, blah, blah, blah," and I was like,
What's
"That's
lockdown?
interesting."
Is lockdown like just committed relationship or lockdown like what? Like what?
Like, "We're getting so serious, we're gonna move in together."
Okay,
Like,
not serious.
much
Yeah.
later, like, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, I get that." But, I think his point of view was, they've had an unstable life, and with their mom, it's been a little bit less stable in her environment, so I wanna make it as stable as possible. And so we stayed friends after we stopped dating, we'd talk about it, and I'd be like, I wanna pose this other side to you." I was like, "I understand why you wanna protect your kids from that because 'cause they've been exposed to that on the other side.
Yeah.
However, what if you have the opportunity to introduce your kids in a healthy way, have them see a
Oh,
healthy relationship?" And
yes.
that's a beautiful thing that
Wow.
we can give as parents, because if they're having an
Yeah.
unstable way in the other parent's house, what if you can show them
Yeah.
how to do it respectfully, beautifully, in a way that they feel heard and they can watch the 2 of you interact in a
Modeling.
supportive, kind
Yeah.
way? Because we learn about love
Wow.
and
Wow, that's
relationships
really,
in
yeah.
our home.
Yes, I
Love is
yeah.
always defined by who raises us. Like, that is our no one teaches love in school. We learn it in our families. We learn it from our immediate people. And so if we carry that forward in relationships, I believe that that's a as it unfolds for me, I believe that that's an important piece for me to offer to
Mhm.
my son, to, like,
Interesting.
and to have him have another input.
Right.
So, it was my friend at the time, he's like, "Huh, I haven't thought about it that way. Let me
I
get back
hadn't
to
either.
you." Like,
I hadn't either, because there's so much possibility in that, and it's the opposite of fear. It's the
It
opposite
is.
of fear of what you just brought out, right? So that is like there's so much possibility, and I think even in, yeah, gosh, I mean, even for me, I could just speak as a parent, like, sometimes I'm just so concerned about who has access to my kids, and and that's fear-based, for sure it's fear-based because
Yeah.
I and it's not like, "Oh, you can only think this or you can only think that," it's just that there are some things that I feel like maybe they're not ready for or to, be exposed to yet, or maybe not ready
Yeah.
to contend with or whatever. But to your point, well, then that just puts them in the conversation. It just puts them
It
in
does.
the space to have the conversation like, hey, my parents, my friend's parents are, getting a divorce or they got divorced and, I met the mom's boyfriend or something. Oh, how was that? What did you like about that? What is your friend saying about that? How is she navigating that? And you normalize all those that's so good, Reach, too, yeah, because you just
Mm.
normalize all those conversations,
Yes.
to your point, around love and acceptance. Love and
Yeah.
acceptance, it is not around, like, fear-mongering and judgment. Yeah, because that's
No.
the
And
greed.
that's
The greed is, like,
yeah.
the fear, the judgment, I just wanna hold on to this greedy, 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 and I don't get the expansion, the possibility that can be there of if they do and this is I mean, it's kind of the point too about the closed door. It's like, well, my job, I would feel like in that position is to say, "Do you believe you have what you need? How can I support you in the situations that you're walking into? How" I can tell you what I think can do for you, and then you can tell me if you agree that that's what you need or don't need or whatever, but just the expansion on the way you just presented it is, like, mind blowing to me, truthfully. Like, I'm just like, like,
Yeah.
whoa, because I am
Thanks.
so dang protective of my kids, and I just sorry to monopolize, I'll finish this part and then turn, because my daughter was, going over to a friend's house for dinner recently, and, it's just like, "Oh, I don't know the parents, and I don't know this," and I mean, I was just like, "Look, if those parents can't see in you what I see, like, they need to remember whenever my kids have friends over, I always remember that they have some parents behind them, or maybe their parents aren't super supportive, and then even more so, my job to your point, teach them about love and to, love them and fill them up and all that stuff. And I, said very clearly to my kids, I'm like, look, if you're over there and you feeling not being welcomed and accepted, then that's on them. That's on them. You're the child showing up in this situation. You're the teenager showing up in this situation. As long as you're not disrespectful and, abrasive and things like that. My kids, I don't think generally are, but yeah, like that mama bear thing comes from protection. It also comes from fear. It comes from a lot of the things that you just blew the lid off of in that, yeah, in that conversation, which I totally appreciate. Yeah, so keep talking because that was really helpful.
So, when I had that kind of realization, it's my job is not to just only protect my son, it's also to expose and educate him. And that
Yeah,
is only done by through experience. And
yeah,
that experience can be achieved in many ways. Like you said, going to a friend's house who like they have parents that are dating and that person's over and they get exposed to them. And then to me, I'm dating and I'm like, okay, but at one point, I was like, I kind of want to meet the person you're dating. I was like, okay, we can make that happen, right? And it's not one conversation again. It's many conversations. It's like, having them decide like, how does that work for you? What do you need? And the other piece I'm really trying to teach him is it's not just what does he need? It's I have needs.
yeah,
This is my need. How can I meet
yeah.
your needs as well while I'm meeting my needs? Right?
Wow, God,
Like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
because it's not easy. I mean, a lot of us will
Mm-mm.
like die on that hill. And I was like, I
Yeah,
need to
that's me.
balance
I for
that.
sure would die on that hill. Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
And you and I are
I'd be
different in
eaten
this
by
way.
ants.
I know exactly. Be carried down with my hands. So yeah, so for me, this is my growth area right now is like, how do I be true to who I am and
Mhm.
still support and still recognize my son has needs and I can support them too? And what does that look like? And so for me, that is, the conversation with him is about that. And And then because I'm having this conversation with him about mine, when he brings home someone he is interested in, he wants to have over and he is seeing and dating and, it's he has needs just like I do,
Right.
right? Just because he's younger doesn't mean he doesn't have
That's
them.
correct. That's right.
And
Yeah.
trust me, I am very clear, like, I'm grateful that he isn't experiencing this in my house while I'm here. Because some kids
Yeah.
don't have this until college, and then I don't get to be around for it. So I'm like, "Great, let's do it here." Because then I get to help, or I get to discuss, or I get to ask
Oh,
questions, or
this
I
is
get to talk about
important.
his
Yeah,
choices.
this is
Because if
important.
it happens here while he's still in high school, while he's still under my roof, he gets experience, he gets
Mhm.
choice, and he gets support from me and like on a daily basis because we're daily in
Yeah.
the same house. And for that, I'm grateful. So when I approach him now and see him in his situations, I have to remember, like, he is coming from the same place I was, like that
Yeah.
this is something he's interested in. This is a person he's, drawn to. This is a person he wants to get to know. Like, what are his needs? How can I help support them while still addressing my needs? Right. And how do
Right.
we do that? And that's where, we talked a lot about this when the driving thing, I was like, the
Yeah.
driving thing is about choice and understanding choice and the impacts of that and how to make decisions. And this is another area that he can see how I'm doing choices and making decisions. And I can watch where he, observe him and see the areas and the conversations continue to happen. They're just kind of weaving in and out
Yeah.
as we move through this.
Yeah, and it's kinda I'm just reflecting too because I have a girlfriend who, many, many, many years ago, when her kids were in high school and she was divorced and, dating this really great guy and, was involved with him, I don't know, for maybe a year or so. And it was the same kind of conversation about not introducing them or introducing them. And at that time, her son was kind of giving her a really hard time about this. So I mean, that's like a whole web to weave too, because, he was probably struggling with other things, but I remember the conversation with her was just like, what am I teaching him? How is that fair? Fair in like to your point, like, do I then totally go away from the situation or do I step into what he's feeling, by it's almost like by showing him this example safely, like, giving him the line of safety, like, "This person is not here to harm you. This person is not here to hurt our family. This person is not here to rock your world or to, we're
Or to
your
take me
dad and
away
I are
from
already
you.
divorced." Like,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that ship has sailed, right? So it's maybe it was some of that, I don't know, but, like, that had already happened, and it just, like, kinda coming up against being sensitive to yeah, you probably have a better perspective on this too, but being sensitive to, when the kids are kinda coming up against that, and that we feel it too, like, I feel like when the kids bring home their new boyfriend or whatever, some of us, I guess, are really excited. We're like, "Hey, he has a boyfriend or a girlfriend," or like I said, a boyfriend or whatever it ends up being, but some of us are kind of not ready to jump on that wagon. You
No,
know
but it's like,
you know?
here's the thing is you don't decide when the wagon's
I
going,
know.
right?
Exactly.
Like
Right. Yeah.
that's the part you can't be greedy about that. Like you cannot wish that away. Like the wagon is coming. And we know as we were all teenagers at one point that when our
Yeah.
parents say no, like they're like, "Well, you can't do that." Like,
Oh,
"Do you
yeah,
think
you're
that's
like,
going to
double
change?"
down. Yeah, for
Yeah, they'll
sure.
double down. Then
Yeah.
it's like, "I'll double
Yeah.
dog dare you." And you're like, "Oh gosh." And we go. So
You're like, "In
that's
that case, I'm spending the night at Susie's.
totally. Totally, in that case, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And
The
that's
old "I'm
where
spending the night at." Yeah.
uh-huh, and that's where it gets, I can understand, it I was thinking about this and I was like, when a child, like when your child or my child reacts to something, I'm like, he's reacting to the situation, but it's usually not the reaction that's going on. It's like what's underlying there. And you
Yeah.
said, like, like your friend, like, have the conversation. It was like, "Well, your dad and I aren't getting back together. We're divorced. Like, this is like something that is valuable to me, whatever." And it's like, is it like, is his fear that like this stability in his world that was unstable before, is this going to make it unstable again?
Yeah, or
Or is
more.
this person
Yeah, yeah.
truly going to be here and stay? Because the last, the marriage didn't. So how would this be
Right.
different? Like, I don't want to get
Yeah,
like
yeah,
attached
yeah.
to someone again and have them walk out. There's like so many pieces. And I can tell you right now, I don't think kids understand what those are yet. Like, they're just having an emotional reaction, but they're not understanding
Yeah,
what it
no,
is,
I
and
think
to
most
decipher
adults don't
that.
understand. Yeah, I think a lot of us don't
True.
understand when it comes up. Yeah, we're just
Exactly.
like, "Oh, I'm really mad about that," and it's like
Yeah. It's like,
uncover,
it goes
uncover,
6
uncover.
layers
You're like,
down.
yeah, totally. You're like, "Oh, yeah, that's right." My dad said that to me when
Yeah.
I was 7, and I've never forgot it. Yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's it. Yeah.
So, it's, that is a hard, piece to figure out. And part of it is, going back to my truth, right? And so if I continue to show up as me and
Yeah.
continue to show up as like who I want to be, how I want to appear, the lessons I want to instill in him. What I don't want to instill in him is someone that's a pushover, someone
Ooh.
that sacrifices myself for the
Oh.
everybody else. Right? Like,
Oh
I don't want to
gosh.
instill those values. I don't want to instill the people
Yeah.
pleaser values, which I know I can lean to. So this is
Mm.
another opportunity for me to teach something much greater than just meeting someone. And then also for
Yeah.
him to observe how he is reacting in his situations and his like relationships or situationships, or whatever they are, to
Yeah.
see where I can help just shed some light for him, because it's
It's such
just
a
like it's
powerful, like,
dating,
vulnerability
right?
conversation, right? For you to sit down and be like, "Hey, gosh," I mean, that's, I'm just God, I'm thinking, like, there's probably so much of this I can have with my kids, even in all these other situations, right? Is,
Yes.
it's, "Hey, I'm reacting I'm sorry I reacted that way," or, "I'm reacting that way, and I want" it's gonna help me for you to understand where that's rooted and what I am working on, actively working on, and, like, to your point, if it's people pleasing or whatever, like, I have
Mm.
developed these habits of pleasing, and I'm working on changing that, and part of that is owning my own needs or owning my own, relationships or my situation or,
Mhm.
things that are ways I have of expressing myself that are authentic, and I would like to share
Mhm.
that with you. I would like to show you that part of me that is authentic, and one of the ways I can do that is by introducing you to people who bring out the most authentic me, right? Bring out, like,
Mhm.
who I can be myself around, and you can see me in that environment being myself and being, like, to your point, like, modeling a very healthy interchange of a relationship, whether that's with just a girlfriend you have over, whatever, because
Absolutely.
yeah, that it's like that is such an important part. I know a lot of times, we have teenagers. It's not like they want to sit there and like have a whole, powwow about about their
No,
feelings, about their emotions, and this whole
no.
thing. But even if it's a 1 minute conversation or a monologue, it's worth throwing out there just to say, hey, I just want you to know this is something I'm kind of dealing with. I feel like I've been a little more proactive maybe over the last couple years, 2 or 3 years, maybe with my kids. Maybe they're getting older, or maybe I'm getting more, uh, aware or comfortable, I don't know, about
Or a
being
combination of
vulnerable with him.
both.
Well, yeah, maybe I'm growing up.
Right.
Maybe I'm
It's
just
all, you
growing
both are
up.
growing up.
But part of that is taking the response gosh, yeah, yeah, what you say is it's very impactful, Rach, actually, you're very I mean, we
Huh.
always say we don't know where these conversations are going, and you're
I
really
know.
hitting like, striking a nerve for me because it is like there's so much power in that vulnerability, and then that's what creates intimacy, and that's what gives you
Mhm.
these meaningful relationships that are deep and rewarding and, comfortable and bring out just the person that you are, meant to be in the world. And if you can express that that is what's going on rather than like, "Oh, hey, I just want you to meet my boyfriend. This is John. He's gonna have dinner with us." It's just like, no, like that doesn't have to go. To your point, you can way put that conversation way ahead of it, and even I think, I was just out with my girlfriends the other night, and I think even that is an important conversation to have with my kids because my husband's home, he's chilling. I'm out, with my girlfriends having a girls' night, celebrating a birthday. And yeah, and I think that's even important conversation to have with all my kids, but especially my girls just to say, like, they're like, "Oh, what's dad doing?" I'm like, "Oh, he's chilling." I don't know. You'll have to ask him because I have made this commitment to go to your point, to go do something that's fulfilling to me that, meets my needs of friendship and companionship. And, girls, women talk about a lot of different things when the boys aren't around,
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
freeing and
Women,
it's,
we need yeah.
we
We
need
need
the
our tribe.
connection. We
Yeah.
need our
We need a
yes,
different
and,
and
I have
people
lots
and
of
women
mini tribes. Yeah, so it's like it's
yeah.
nice. It's so great to be able to have
It
that, and then to
expresses
your point
yeah.
yeah, and to
It
model
expresses
it.
different parts of you, and it
Yeah,
is a different way to process. We process differently with our partners,
yeah,
like
for
our
sure.
like either husband, romantic partner versus like a girlfriend. Like, and then it's unique to women that
Yeah,
we lean into more of the girlfriends, the tribe, the
connecting.
sisterhood.
Mhm.
And it fills an important piece. If we try to lean into our partner on that, that doesn't work,
Yeah,
right?
sometimes it falls flat. Yeah.
It not that it just falls flat, like, it ends up putting a lot of weight onto our partner that it is
Mhm.
not their area of
Oh, I see, yeah.
expertise,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
I
Like,
yeah.
it's like you're
Mhm.
expecting something. It's like I love this one, that, Anna always says, like, it's like going to Home Depot and expecting them to have bread. They don't
Totally.
have bread there, but you're gonna keep
No,
going to Home Depot and get upset that they don't have bread. So just realize
that's
Home
right.
Depot doesn't have bread. There's certain things that are great in one relationship and not in another. Like they're different. They serve different purposes. So Home Depot is not where you grocery shop. You grocery shop over at the other place. You go to Home Depot to get
Yeah. And
your
again, you don't
screwdriver and
blame
your
Home
nails.
Depot for not having bread. You don't go
No,
talk to the manager and say, "Why the
exactly.
heck don't you have bread here?" It's like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with us. We're
Yeah. So
actually
this
just
is like
hungry. Yeah.
yeah, there's a long tangent to go back to. You're right. Like meeting your needs, owning your truth, and showing that to your kids because that's what we want, Chris. I mean, that's
Yeah.
really what we
Yeah.
want them to understand who they are and make
Yes.
choices and decisions based on who they are and their core values. And like, could it be that simple? Yeah, but the only way to have this happen, like one of the great ways is these conversations.
Mhm.
And you said this really wisely. It's not we're going to sit down and break it down for 20 minutes, even 10 minutes. It might be a
No.
2 minute 30-second, like whatever it is, snippet, and it's done over time in little bits of information because we
Yeah.
don't learn in long lectures. We learn in snippets. And
Yeah. Well,
especially the
especially the
teenage brain.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's when they're sitting at the
They
kitchen table doing something else. You're
totally.
sitting there maybe, like, making a snack or, whatever, reading a magazine, and they're like, "Hey, I just kinda wanted to bring something up really quick, blah, 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 blah." There's your monologue over, but they hear it. They do hear it,
Yeah,
so I think it's important
they
that
do.
even if you're like, "They are never listening to me," or that it's like, you just have to keep
They're
doing the
listening.
work, and that's to the door being closed. It's like the door being closed is your invitation to have a conversation and to be responsible parenting in that moment, I would say, and to make sure that whatever your desires or wishes, because people, parents, everyone has a different opinion on what you want in your home and what you'll accept and what you won't. That's one conversation
Absolutely.
there too. But
Mhm.
then even if and that's perfectly within your purview to have that conversation. But within that, offer them the flexibility of this is how I see it now while you're in my home. These and
Yeah.
I for sure have had these conversations. This is the structure that exists right now while you're in my home. As you get older and you are able to take on responsibility and you have your own home, then you can make whatever rules work for you in your
Mhm.
own home. So it's kind of this whole give and take, and I think you have to be gosh, I mean, that's another whole layer, right? You have to own your stuff. You have to be confident enough in yourself to even have that conversation about the closed door, right? Because it would be
Yeah.
so tempting, I think, for so many of us either to be like, there's 2 sides, right? Either to be like, "Well, kids are kids, whatever, it's whatever's gonna happen, like, I can't control," like, there's that side. Almost like a bravado side, which I don't align with. And then there's the side with, where you could be like, "Oh, I'm gonna shut it down," and
Yeah,
there's
and then
this
there's everything in the middle. Like
everything in between, and that's the grateful. That's what's hard because the greed is shut it down, and the greed is whatever, kids are kids. Like, I'll just let these sides live because that keeps me out of being responsible for being available and guiding this moment if it's required and if it's, and even the kids are gonna push you have to know that too. The kids are gonna act
yeah,
like they've got it all figured out or, like
right.
"Oh, I
Well,
don't need
and
to hear this."
that's a really good point is there's the sides to it, but the middle, like that center area is where like the beauty really, I think, takes place,
Yeah.
where you have the conversation where you're not walking in as like, these are the hard lines. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
let's have the conversation. Tell me where you're at. I can share where I'm at. Like, here's my point of view. What is yours? Like, where are your needs? Where, like, all of those things, because
So
it
respectful.
they are getting it's respectful, and it is like they're already making choices. So if they're already making choices, let's have the conversation so they feel empowered to help make these choices together,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and
Instead
just
of
like and
feeling
what
like
we would want. They
imposed.
feel they feel heard, they feel validated, they feel
Yes.
engaged, they feel as though their opinion matters, that they feel they have agency over their own body, their own choices, their own whatever, because ultimately they do, even if you have some structure around, while they're in your home, certain ways that you have to kinda guide that, but yeah, I mean, it's okay, because I feel like when you have these situations, it can be so jarring, that all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, the door is closed," or, "Oh, so and so they were introduced to someone's boyfriend. It's not even a husband or it's not even a this," like, right? There's like greed, greed, greed. And the opportunity is to say, "Wow, my" yeah, it hasn't happened, but how it's kinda cool. You're helping me a lot actually to look at it, like, so openly because, like, what it gives say my daughter's over at a friend's house, and that friend had their parents maybe are divorced or, maybe their mom was never married. I don't who the heck knows? And there's another person there. Rather than being fearful of that engagement and fearful of that, meeting, I could look at it in the grateful side of like, "Oh, this is like a whole new way for her to see," not like I don't believe in marriage or anything like that. I'm far from it, but her a whole new way to see that people are asked to navigate their lives in all kinds of ways. In all kinds of ways. Like you don't know how you're going to be asked to show up in this world. You just do not. And you can judge all you want until you're sitting there in the soup, and then you're like, "Oh, crud, I probably want to take back a few of those, judgment calls before,"
Yeah.
because it's true, right? You just don't know. So, being able to look at it powerfully to say like, "Wow, I wonder what
Mm.
she could learn from what," and
Yeah.
then she can make her own assessment. She can make her own assessment.
Right.
"Oh, I don't wanna and I don't wanna be in this kind of a situation. I wanna be in that kind of a situation. I want to set myself up with this kind of education so that I can, protect myself against these things," whatever she decides from that, but yeah, you're helping a lot in the way that I'm thinking about it. I thought thinking about it with my friend, I was like, "Yeah, I think it was helpful kind of like reflection just to look at it as an invitation for a conversation, right? Like, oh, you have this thing,
Absolutely.
like now you can talk to her, but also to say like, she's going to be exposed to a lot of stuff in her world, and I just again, you said it so well when we were talking about the driving thing. It's like you are setting up the relationship going forward.
Yeah.
And I
You are.
totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. I see it with my older kids, as they become adult children. I see the seeds and how, that flows through and the kinds of conversations that are available to us. And
Mm.
they can be kind of heated because, I've got some very politically minded children and I have some who are,
Yeah.
like very opinionated, so there's like a lot of, but even that being able to have like a respectful disagreement and difference of opinion and, different choices that are made for me versus them, they can make their own choices. So yeah, yeah, gosh, yeah, it's to be grateful for the closed door. I guess is that like the moral of the story is like be grateful for the closed door.
Yeah, yes, and, like, all of these things open up opportunities for conversations. They're
Yeah,
all just invitations. You said it's like an invitation, and some people are like, "Oh, I have to have this conversation." I was like, "I get to have this, and I get
I
to have
get
it, and
to.
I'm gonna have it
Yeah.
again, and I get to and this is an I am so curious how this is gonna go, how he's gonna respond, what he's gonna say, like, how can I support him?" And I'm curious about, like, who he's becoming,
Who is
right?
yeah, what is going on for him?
Who
Like,
is
yeah,
he?
who is
Yeah,
he?
and
Yeah,
this gives me
because he's not the
insight into
same that
that.
he
This
was
gives
6
me
months ago. He's not the same
no,
that he was
or
probably
like
3 months
last
ago.
week.
Yeah,
I know.
right.
Like he's
Yeah.
changing fast and he's growing fast and he has a lot of inputs and he has a lot of opinions and he's malleable and like, all of those things. And I'm like, if I don't have these conversations, I'm not gonna know.
Right.
I'm gonna miss a period. And that's like to your point little conversations over and like little things and little droplets and listen and observe and they're all opportunities really
Yeah.
and I used to think like this is not how I imagined it but I was like well no but I have a lot of opportunities I've never imagined either so
Well, that's
for
true.
that I'm
Exactly,
grateful
and that's
instead
I
of
mean,
sitting in
yeah. Yeah,
the greed
exactly,
of
because
this is not
I
what I
love what you
wanted.
said. I love the part about owning your needs. These are all the grateful, like, I can, like,
Okay.
kinda sum up,
Let's
like, as
get
we're,
there.
like yeah, like, because I feel like this has just been a very, like, unexpected, I think, conversation for me, you know? But, like, the gratefulness is being grateful for the closed door because that's actually not closed, it's actually an open invitation to open the
There
door
you
to,
go.
have that whole
Yeah.
conversation, right? Um, and being grateful to your point, if you have adult friends that you are, bringing over or introducing, like, to be grateful for the opportunity to model your hard-earned relationship. Your hard like, it's so hard earned to get to that point where you are willing to well, I this is my opinion, to when you get to the point where you're willing to introduce someone to your
Mm,
children, right? And if
yeah.
you can take that as a real responsibility to I'm not just gonna, like, throw it away like, "Oh, this is so and so and meet him and like you I need don't you like him?" Like that kind of stuff. No, again, it's like to be grateful for that interchange, to be grateful for that exchange with your kids to say like, "Oh, let me tell you, like, these are the things that I notice that I like about myself when I'm with this person. This is why I wanted you to meet him or her, right? This is what I'm noticing about myself. And I'm noticing I'm calm or I'm at ease. And this is, I think, why that's going on. Have you had experiences like that? Have you, what goes on for you when you're with whoever you're with, or when you have a movie date or whatever. Yeah. Rather
Yeah.
than the greed is you can tell me, okay, you'll do your quick takeaway. So my quick takeaway on that's my grateful. And the greed is the fear. The greed is the fear. The greed is the limited belief that there's one way to view it, that I need to shut this down, or I need not to talk about it, or I
Mhm.
need to make sure that it goes away. And ostrich, head in the sand, or
Mhm.
I need to guide the conversation rather than allowing, my spouse to have their full on conversations that I may or may not be privy to because they're totally
Mm.
different. A male conversation is different from a female conversation. So allowing that to coexist, but don't be greedy about that too, right? Because that's the greed is though I need to get in there and have the conversation with my daughter. I agree, I do, but that doesn't mean that my husband's conversations are any less valuable or any less warranted, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so those are my quick takeaways. What about you?
I think it was just a reminder to for this experience for me is to model the things that I wanna instill in my child, like, and I wanna instill in my son, right? Instead of,
Mhm.
I don't want to come as a dictator into his world because that's not who I want him to grow up to be.
Mhm.
I want him to think about things mindfully. I want him to understand what his core values are, understand who he is, and make those choices. And for me, this was a reminder of that. And a reminder that, like, sometimes the door goes closed and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't predict this coming. You said that, Ghost Story.
Right.
Sometimes it happens fast and it does. But also not shying away from that then and be like, okay, I got to lean into this. And, as much as I think I try to stay in front of like the curveballs, like in front of the stuff, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm catching up to it. But to just remind myself that these things are really key, um, because I know modeling the healthy relationship, taking care of myself, all of those things that I want him to come out with. And if I can't do them, I can't expect him to do them. The greed
Yeah.
comes from wishing things were different. That's still like I can still hear it when I say it. I was like,
Mhm.
I didn't want to be in this. I never would have predicted. And you know what? You're right. I couldn't have predicted the situation at all.
No. No.
And it's also beautiful and it's also imperfect and it's also messy, but it also has been such beautiful growth for not just me, but for my son. And
Right.
like, sure, we could have growth in lots of ways, but this way is the way we received it. And it has been
Right. Mm. Oh, I love
phenomenal, right? And
yeah.
it has. And so
Yes.
I need to
Grateful for
really,
however it
that whole
comes. Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that whole thing, that's really where I sit right now, and it's been helpful to, like, process this with you to remind me and to see
Yeah,
it
this is great.
again. Yeah,
Yeah, and
awesome.
grateful for who you are, like who you can champion yourself to be, who you can model for your son, like or I can model for my kids. And gosh, I mean, you're even like I know we're out of time, but it's like I'm even like,
I
wow,
know, it's
because
like, "You gotta go."
even today I had a situation where I was like kind of getting a little like I was getting a little aggro about some stuff that, yes, it's warranted, I guess. But in the same light, I can always lean into modeling my best self. What is my best self, in that moment?
Mm,
Yes, I'm gonna have flubs, I'm gonna have like flubs up and down, but then being, responsible for that and saying, hey, like I kind of handled it, even if I wasn't attacking anyone specific, I was just kind of aggro in general at the world, having a moment.
mhm.
But being able to be responsible for that and then having a conversation about like, yeah, I mean, my kids even are at the age where I could ask them like, "Hey, what do you think I should do in that situation?" Like, I'm like really PO'd about this
Mm,
thing that I can't figure out or I can't do, and it's sort of driving me insane. And I didn't in that moment have a way to own it. And I don't always have to go to my my colleague friends, my mom friends or my, friends of my age. I think now, even in this conversation, I'm seeing there's opportunity even to go to my grown children and say like, "Hey,
mm,
what do you think? Because I value your opinion. I value the decision-making process
mm,
that you are going through. I value the skills that you're developing in this area." And they're in college, they're working, they're doing all these things that are very complicated, things to attack in the world, right? And yeah, being grateful for that. Being grateful for even when I'm having that moment, I don't have to have all the answers anymore. Like I don't. I have four, grown, semi-grown, I have one who's on the cusp, but more, but very much closing in on having all adult children. And I can really look to them too to be a support for me, just like what you're saying, in your life, if you bring
yeah,
over a new person or something like that, they can be part of that
yeah,
discussion rather than imposed upon. Yeah, I love that. I love that. This has been great. I feel like that was just like one of the best therapy sessions I've ever had. I didn't even pay for it, Rach. Thank you.
yeah. No, I wanna tie up what you just said because I think it was really, really important. Is you're like, I can go to them, and what you're modeling to them is like, you don't always have the answers. You struggle too, and there's always growth, and you're showing them that like even though they think like my mom knows everything, she's so smart, she's
Right.
like whip fast and like always get it under control because that's what like you have uh, the amount of capacity you have is incredible, Chris. Like, I'm so, wow. But to then
Right.
show
Right.
them the struggle and show them the times that you're unsure and show them the times you don't know is incredibly helpful for them. and
Yeah.
a really awesome thing you are giving to them, not just them giving to you, but you are giving to them by doing that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that would be a great gift, and especially in a non-pandering way, in a very
A
respectful,
non-pandering way.
genuine, "I would love to have your input on this," uh, kind of way, and I've got some kids who are really wise too, and I think that I mean, I'm like,
You
"Oh,
do.
this is great. I'm gonna
You
get so
do.
much more help," or yeah, because I'm worried about the dishwasher, and I'm worried about like, the towels on the floor, and I can really elevate this conversation. The gratefulness is
Mm.
just, like, coming to me, and, the opportunities I have, it's just really flowing in, so I love that. I wish we had, like, another 2 hours, honestly, because it's this is just great. It's just, like, this has just been a whole lot of stuff,
Yeah,
like, coming out there,
it
so,
is.
yeah, I love it. So I will tell everyone that this has been, is, and will forever
Mhm.
be the Grateful Not Greedy podcast. And it was my pleasure to be with you, Rach. I appreciate the conversation. That was awesome.
I also appreciate the conversation. Thank you, Chris, for your time, your
Yeah.
energy, and your curiosity. Thanks.
Oh, I love it. Thanks. Okay. Aloha, Rach.
Aloha, Chris.
Okay. We will see you next time.
Next time.